Member for Oakby Golden Head.
Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker, and it gives me great pleasure to sit down and allow the member from Vancouver, Fairview, to introduce the class, because it is so incredibly important that we engage our youth in our democracy, and so thank you to the member, and thank you to the class for being here, even though I can't see you up there. On to the agreement that we're debating, Bill 2, Great Bear Rainforest Act, which I'm sure each and every young person in that class is going to go home, riveted to the screen, and watch all debates today and make sure that they study this, because there will be a test on Friday next week on what you have learned about the Great Bear Rainforest. I'm just joking. There's no test. I'm only joking. Oh, it's Good Friday, of course. It's a holiday. So clear. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Coming back to the agreement, as I mentioned, there will be some who don't think enough was given. There will be some who think too much is given. But I would say to those people and to those groups, you were not present at the table. I was not present at the table. And those who were present at the table, 26 First Nations, the province, non-government organizations, forest companies, came to an agreement, a monumental agreement that protects vast areas of our Great Bear Rainforest. Now, the issue of protection is a complex one, Honourable Speaker. As we know, the forests make up more than half of the Great Bear Rainforest, a total of 3.7 million hectares, or 9.1 million acres. And the land use orders in this bill, Honourable Speaker, identify 1.36 million acres of managed forest that will support a sustainable harvest, which creates stability for First Nations, workers, communities, investors, and customers alike. 1/3 of the Great Bear Rainforest is fully protected in parks and conservation areas, and about 9% of the total, it's about 15% of the forested area, is available for timber harvesting in the managed forest. The managed forest, Honourable Speaker, comprises 550,000 hectares, or about 1.36 million acres, where harvesting of old growth and second growth is focused on, guided by ecosystem-based management. We'll explore, Honourable Speaker, at committee stage what this government's interpretation of ecosystem-based management is, but I would like to outline the subtle differences between the various land use zones, because it is complex and it is something that I think not all will appreciate. 471 hectares are fully protected in what are known as parks and protected areas, Honourable Speaker. Now, protected areas, Honourable Speaker, generally have one or more existing or proposed activities that are not usually allowed in a park, i.e. perhaps a proposed industrial road, pipeline, transmission line, or communication site. Allowable activities, Honourable Speaker, and management direction are determined by specific provisions and special conditions when the area is established, as well as relevant sections of the Park Act and the Park Conservancy and Recreation Area Regulation, as identified in the Order of Council. Honourable Speaker, conservancies are also being used. Now, 1.5 million hectares, or about 3.7 million acres, are in a designation that protects ecological values and recognizes the importance of specific areas for First Nations. So, Honourable Speaker, what are conservancies? Well, conservancies are slightly different, again, from the protected areas. They are Crown land set aside for four things. One, the protection and maintenance of their biological diversity and natural environments. Two, the preservation and maintenance of social, ceremonial, and cultural uses of First Nations. Three, the protection and maintenance of their recreational values. Four, the development or use of natural resources in a manner consistent with A, B, or C. So as I say, Honourable Speaker, conservancies are a designation that protect ecological values but recognize the importance of specific areas to First Nations. Honourable Speaker, 764,000 acres are being designated biodiversity mining and tourism areas. These are areas, Honourable Speaker, where the primary use is biodiversity conservation and protection of ecological and cultural values, but commercial forestry and hydroelectric generation linked to the power grid are not allowed. And then, Honourable Speaker, there's the special forest management areas, 675,000 acres of which are preserved. And these are areas where hydroelectric generation, mining and tourism development is allowed as long as it maintains ecological integrity. Commercial forestry is not allowed it is expected that some of these will become biodiversity mining and tourism areas or conservancies over time. So, Honourable Speaker, the land plan and the land use zones are quite complex and lead to a rather beautifully coloured map that I'm not allowed to show as it would be considered a prop, of which we have to consider when we look at the Great Bear Rainforest. Honourable Speaker, when I quote a couple of leading voices on this agreement, I think it's important to recognise that there is widespread support. Vicky Husband, as we all know, one of BC's leading environmental voices, said it is impressive that environmental negotiators were able to get so much when government wanted to give so little. But she is dismayed that the deal has allowed the government to cast itself as green when it is still allowing ancient forests to be logged and grizzly bears to be shot. So there's support, but qualified support. Rick Slako, who chairs a group representing logging companies in the region, stated, what we're getting for it is a dedicated land base, a defined amount of harvest, a harvest that is conflict-free, a harvest we can plan our business around, and it comes with a social license. Honourable Speaker, he also noted that the significant part of this agreement for the forest industry is that we're still going to cut trees down. We're going to cut down less of them. You should have said fewer of them, and cut them down in a different way. I'm glad that the class is now left because I was just correcting the grammar for them there. I was sick. I should add a bracket, SIC bracket for Hansard there. And cut them down in a different way. We didn't do this to go out of business, he says. Honourable Speaker, so we have qualified support from Vicky Husband, a well-known name, but frankly, to get qualified support from her is quite a sign that this is a deal that has got widespread support in the province, and also from the forest industry as well, when so much land is preserved, is also quite a significant coup that we have. I do caution some temperance on the rhetoric that we're hearing, Honourable Speaker, from the government. I recognize that the government is proud to bring this to us today, as we are all proud in British Columbia to be able to support this. But however, statements like, we're green world leaders, this is our gift to the planet, you know, it's a little tough to take from a government that's purporting on developing an industry that the rest of the world is either moving away from or already has a glut of supply in. Honourable Speaker, let's not forget too that in fact the deal that saved the Great Bear Rainforest has actually been announced something like 15 times already over the past number of years. And that this is, while an often cited announcement, it is important to recognize that it is this government and this legislature that has the honour of being able to prove it today. So while I do caution the temperance, government doesn't need to oversell this. This sells itself. There's no need for rhetoric to say how great government is in doing this. This sells itself. We will praise this agreement on this side of the House as much as anybody. So I suggest that in some sense credibility is lost a little bit if government touts its own success. Let others tout the success, because this is a success. And we are here to actually support government on this. But it is not the thing that makes BC giving a gift to the entire world, making us green leaders of the world. It's an important step, an important conservation step, a historic agreement that puts the rights of First Nations front and center, the rights of the ecological systems there, front and center. And we'll explore this in more detail at committee stage. Honourable Speaker, as I mentioned, this bill really, again, is about very specific details focused on determining the allowable annual cut and forest licenses, tree farm licenses that will be affected. It's not light reading for grade 5 elementary students who may attend it here. The summaries are much easier to grapple with. As the government has suggested, this bill will enable implementation of a unique ecosystem-based management rules to the Great Bear Rainforest that move beyond current legislation while ensuring normal rules under the Forest Act still apply. This is important, but we need to explore what government is thinking ecosystem-based management means. Honourable Speaker, government also is suggesting that this will legally establish a Great Bear Rainforest area and assign an initial allowable annual cut of 2.5 million cubic meters per year for 10 years for the entire area. But after 10 years, the allowable annual cut would be determined by the Chief Forester under Section 8 of the Forest Act, as is the case in other management units. Again, Honourable Speaker, something that needs exploration at committee stage as to what government is thinking here in the longer term. Honourable Speaker, the government says this agreement will establish new timber supply areas and reconfigure existing ones to better reflect the boundaries of the Great Bear Rainforest. Again, Honourable Speaker, something that we'll explore further at committee stage with respect to what the boundaries and how they are defined of the Great Bear Rainforest are. Honourable Speaker, the government also says this bill will provide for the designation of new special forest management areas that prohibit commercial timber harvesting areas. Again, here, Honourable Speaker, we'll seek information further as to what commercial means in this regard and how the different land use zones come into play. Government says that it plans to enable regulations to specify where forest practices may differ from those under the Forest and Range Practices Act and regulations. Again, this needs to be explored more comprehensively in the committee stage. And finally, Honourable Speaker, this bill, government states, will allow the minister to set, and I quote, partitions at the license level, where partitions can be set to ensure a certain portion of a licensee's annual cut is directed in a particular geographic area or restricted to a particular tree species. Again, a topic that I think needs to be explored further at committee stage. So in conclusion, Honourable Speaker, I, like the rest of my colleagues in this House, this chamber, I'm delighted to stand and support this historic agreement. I look forward to committee stage to explore some of the thinking of government as we move towards a discussion of what it has in mind with respect to the regulations that it is empowering in the introduction of this bill. And I leave government with a final note that let us celebrate your success as well. It is far better than when government touts its own successes too much because people don't actually value and appreciate the success when it is done that way. It is better when others call you world-class. It is better when others congratulate you. When one congratulates oneself or one calls oneself world-class, it makes one wonder if you are world-class or whether we should be congratulating you. With that, thank you.